Awesome. Well, I hope you can hear me. Can you just verify that you can?
Yes, we can indeed, Jordan.
Awesome. So I love to hear that. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And while I do that, hopefully you all know what happened when the pivot table walked into the bar. The bartender said, "Should I start a new tab?" Okay. Well, with that, I think that's a great place to start. So just a little bit about me. I'm not a big slide person. If for whatever reason you can't hear me or anything like that, feel free to jump in. Let the moderator know, because I know how that goes. Sometimes you think it's on your end and could be affecting everyone. So just feel free to do that. Now, just a little bit about me before I get started. I run a website called Excel TV. So if you guys want to check that out, it's called Excel. And this is a new tablet I'm using. So sorry for my bad handwriting. So Excel TV is my company, and you can check us out. We spent many years doing online interviews of different Excel experts, and now we blog and we have. Okay, so I'm gonna move a little bit faster here now, especially now, I would say, given that that we have a little time taken away from us, especially now. What I will say here is, if you want to make the most out of this call, this talk today, I would strongly suggest you rewatch it if you can, and mainly just relax. So when we talk about the charts Microsoft forgot, I don't necessarily know if you're going to use these in your own work. I will say that I am a data visualization guy, very big fan of that last talk that talked about data visualization and the need, the need to simplify your work. And in some ways, when we think about what chart junk is, that extra stuff, that extra ink on a chart, then Microsoft, if let's say we're using a pie chart and they give us this 3D element here, the chart itself is a bloated object, right? Because it has all this extra stuff in here that you can do. We can change the title, we can change the depth. I don't need to really go too far into this point because I think you get it. So what I've really been interested in lately, what I've really like to focus on, is pushing Excel's charts to their limits. But the ones that I'm really interested in the things that I really like and want to talk to you today, are spark lines and the camera tool. So we will review these two items here in a minute, just so you get a sense of what they are. And then also, as I look at the description, because sometimes I send a description into these talks and I'm like, oh, I'll come up with the talk. I said there's going to be VBA in this. And I look at this and I think, well, I don't know if I need a whole lot of VBA, but I am going to make good on that promise. And assuming we have time, I'm going to have a little bit of VBA at the end. So mainly, though, I'm going to move very quickly. So make sure that you watch. I will have a link at the end for the downloads. And I will also provide the downloads to the organizers so they get it. So without further ado, I should also really say, because I would have liked to open with this if I could have and my phone had not disconnected, that I really do appreciate the time and the effort that the folks at Some Product have put into this, that this is really a really cool thing. And now more than ever, a moment to feel connected, where data is in many ways part of how we are responding to COVID. So to have these skills right now and to do it in such a community really means a lot. And it is a manifestation, I think, of how data is everywhere. And it's very, very important now more than ever. So with that, let's just get a let me think how to put this, like a beginning place here. And now, so let's see here. I had started, I'm just going to have to reset myself back up. Let me open this file here to what I wanted to do. So let's talk about the first two items that I just want to make sure you know, which are Sparkline and the camera tool. So I'm going to open that up here. I have my Tornado data open up here, and many people know I've used this data set. So I said we're gonna make 3 different charts, the ones that Excel forgot to add. But before we do that, we must be familiar with these 2 tools. The first is the camera tool. If you have never seen this camera tool, you're like, hey, what is that? Well, the way to get it is you're gonna go to File, Options, and you're gonna go to Quick Access Toolbar here. And this is the weirdest part. under where it says popular commands, you're going to click all commands. I mean, who decides who is popular, who is not among the commands? I didn't know there was a click. But in any case, you're going to select all commands, and you got to get to this list where there's a C in there. So I'll just select anywhere in here. You can see it says C. So we're going to scroll down. I'm hitting down here, down, down, down. Boom, there's our camera tool. I've already added it over here to my quick access toolbar. That's where you find it. I know I went through that quickly, but of course you can go ahead and Google that afterwards. That's something that actually, you know, there's a lot has been written about it. Now that I have the camera tool up here, as you can see, it's right here. What it allows me to do is take a snapshot of anywhere in my spreadsheet. So what I like to do is highlight. We're going to highlight a random area here. Go ahead, say cheese. You click the camera tool, and if I click over here, what you see now is actually a live version of that area that I selected. Now you're thinking, wait, what area did you select again? Well, with the camera tool selected, I can go up here into the formula bar, and you see that there's actually a formula in here, and that I can even edit it. Like if I edited this going from D5 to I12, if I made this I13, you see that it actually updated this. So this is live. If I put it on top of the cell region it's referencing, it becomes infinitely regressive. It's like in Back to the Future, right? Don't touch yourself or whatever. Don't meet yourself. If you ever travel back in time, these things should not be stacked on top of each other. What's cool about this component is that it sits between a function, right? Like it can formula, it can reference cells, but it's also a picture. So if I'm over here, I see it says picture format, and I could even do crazy things, which again, as we learned in the last presentation, don't do this. This isn't good to do to your table, but we can treat it like a picture. And in that way, we can also go here, and this is what I always do after I create something with the camera tools. I hit this reset picture like this, and this makes it see through. It gets rid of anything that was embellished and added when you hit the or when you click from the camera tool. Because as you can see here, I'll just do it again. I'm going to highlight this area, camera tool. I'll click somewhere else. It puts a border around it. It does some other stuff. So if you just hit reset picture, you get it back to its rawest form. And that's what we're going to end up doing. All right, so that's item one that we need to know as we start building. The next thing we need to know is sparklines. So sparklines were created by Edward Tufte, another data visualization guru. I'm a big fan of them. And what they're really cool is that they're light, right? So unlike a chart, which has all this stuff added to it, and as we learned in the last presentation, a lot of that is really works against us and our ability to present and communicate effectively. Sparklines are very much to the point. And what they'll do is insert a cell into this, insert a chart into a cell rather easily. So where do you find a sparkline? Well, I'm over on the Insert tab. I'm going to take my mouse over, going right, over to the right over here. And I'm going to click on this line right here. So now it's asking me, well, what's your data range and where's your location range? So we have the location range selected, but I'm going to highlight the data range here. And you can see it popped a little line chart in there. I'm going to actually turn this into a column chart. So let's think about what we're visualizing here. In 1950, in the United States, there were 201 tornadoes. What we're showing here is not that 201. Rather, what we're showing is the January through December. We're showing that sort of zoomed in information. Now, what's cool with sparklines is I can take this here and treat it, again, much like we think about the camera tool. This is one of those types of Excel functions that kind of works flexibly, right? I can drag it down. You see that actually it's taken what was over here and it's treated it almost like a formula with a relative reference. So a few things that sparklines allow us to do. I'm going to go here to sparkline. We see it has a high point, a low point. Let's think about what we learned in the last presentation, right? Let's put our noise, let's say, what we don't want to tell all of the story. We want to tell an important story. So we're going to make this kind of shaded out like that. And if I click high point here, you can see now actually that the high point is within these months is highlighted, and that we actually see we see the distribution, but it's not necessarily the most important part. So if I scroll down, we can even see that there is some central tendency towards it, and perhaps one could argue it's moving over to the right a little bit. Okay, so we've done that, but we have this problem here, because notice that while the range of numbers in each one of these references is different, all these charts all have the same axis, right? So they're basically always plotting to the max value within the series to the left of it. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. So what we're really seeing here is relative. These are what the largest values, but we know that later on that there were actually more tornadoes, right? In H48 here in 1992, we see that that's a big number. So what we got to do here is, and I don't really need to highlight it all. I can just click anywhere in there. It's going to highlight the whole thing, because we can do this to all the spark lines, is that we need to go to the axis here, and under the vertical minimum axis, or maximum axis, I should say, I'm going to put in a custom value here, I'm thinking ahead here. Under the maximum, I'm going to click same for all spark lines. So that's going to put the max for all the spark lines, and so they'll all just share the same axis, which is something you got to do when you think about data visualization and the story you want to tell. So I'll click that, and now you see that these have actually reduced. So you get both the story of how they're increasing and over time, and also what that distribution is relative to other years. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense to you. I really should say here, I was saying they're right and wrong. It really all depends on what the story you're trying to tell. So what are you trying to say here? So that's something that we really need to think about. Okay, so this is a pretty interesting story here. If I were to highlight, let's say, all the total tornadoes for all of the years, we have that data right here. So from 1950 to 1994, this is our total here, 201. And we know if we sum this up here, I don't know if you can see this, my sum total is 201, just to prove it to you. So if I were to take this here, and I'm going to do this super quick, and I went to insert, and I inserted a line chart, or perhaps we insert a scatter plot instead, just another way of looking at it, so we can see that there's kind of a trend there, and you see there's some error around that trend. Now, that's one story we can tell, right? And one of the problems with this story, though, is that it peanut butter spreads all of the data into a year, right? Because as we see that there's actually some inherent seasonality, or some trend, I should say, within the data below. So wouldn't it be great to actually take all this data here and plot everything? Okay, so that was kind of where I first started in our first chart we're going to make. And the idea behind this chart is we're going to plot everything, but we're also going to allow you to sort of zoom in. So in my imagination, I'm going to go click on this here. My imagination, it would be something kind of like one of these charts that we see here. So right now we're looking at a crypto asset called Chainlink, one that I'm a fan of. And so I'm really enamored by these charts down here. This one is the one that you used to see on Yahoo Finance a lot. And I thought, well, could we make something very similar in Microsoft Excel? And for years I was thinking about how to do this, and it kind of came to me. It's not perfect, but really what I want to show you here is that if you think outside of the cell, as it were, you can actually make a lot of cool things in Excel. So will you use some of these charts? Well, we'll find out. But if we think about these problems differently, we can actually do quite a lot. So in the download files, you're going to have this timeline selector example here. And this is really the fancier version of what we're going to make. And what we have here is we have all the total tornadoes, and I'm going to show you how we can get all of them here soon. And then we have this timeline selector that allows us to select part of it and show a bigger version here. So because of the way the timeline works, and I couldn't exactly create what was online, but I thought I could get pretty darn close. So I'm going to give you the pieces of this within the next, hopefully 15 minutes, 15 to 10 minutes. We'll see how we're doing on time. And then you can build something like this on your own. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to exit out of this one here. And don't worry, this download file is available for you. So the first thing we need to do is actually get this data here unpivoted. So how can we do that? Well, the quick and dirty way of doing that would be to bring it into Power Query. So I've selected A through N. I'm going to just bring that into Power Query. Perhaps this wasn't the best way to do it, but it is when I really try to think about, well, what can I do with charts differently? How can I do things differently? And when I get into that sort of mode of thinking, this is how I do it. I just become scrappy. So we're going to bring this into Power Query, and what we want to do is we want to get where it says January through December. That's the top, the heading of our table. We want to make that the heading here in Power Query. So how can we do that? First thing we need to do is remove the first 4 rows. So I'm going to click Remove Top Rows here. Type that in, a 4. Go ahead and hit OK on that. So now we have January through December here. That's in our top row, but we want to make it into the column name. So what I'll do is I'm going to click on this Use First Row as Headers button. So now that's a header. And then for good measure, because we don't like column 1 and column 2, that's really tacky. So I'll type in year here. I'll write total here for our tornadoes. Okay, so now the table looks like how we wanted it. Now what I need to do here is unpivot the rest of these, right? How do I unpivot these other columns? Well, I can grab January. I clicked it. I'll hold Shift and grab December like that, and go ahead and go to Transform, unpivot columns like that. And now you see that we have everything as a solid flat file. So we got the year, the total, called this attribute. We're going to call it month, like that, and we have the value for the month. Okay, so once we've done that, I'm going to go to File, Close and Load To, pull that data out. So let's put it into a table like this. And in fact, you know, as I'm doing this, I always forget this step. So we're gonna actually go and bring this. Let me jump back in because I know I'll have messed this up. Okay. So then the next thing we need to do is, so we have the year and we have the month, but we also need let's jump out and wait till this is being loaded. Okay. Now that it's loaded, I can jump back in. So what we also need is a column that is like a monthly type. So what I'm going to do here is, I love column by example. I'm going to go to Add Column. If you're not using this, please use this. This is like the macro recorder for Power Query, right? You just tell it what you want and it figures it out. So I'm going to say Jan 1, 1950 in this one here. So let's see here. It did a pretty good job, Jan 1, 1950. I know from doing this enough times, when I convert this to a date, it says SEP here. It's not going to like that T. I want SEP 1, 1950. Okay, so I've created this custom column. Go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to go up here. Let's convert this to a date type. All right, perfect. So that's what I want. So let's call this date here, because this is what I want. And then I'm going to move this over here. And, you know, I probably should get rid of these columns I don't need, but we'll be okay. You know, we started late, so don't tell anyone. All right, so we're going to add in this date column here. It's very important because that's how we're going to get the timeline working. So I'll wait till it's loaded. And you guys know what comes after an Excel joke, right? A sequel. All right, so with that, perfect timing, it's loaded, so you don't have to hear me make more dumb jokes. So here's what we're going to do. First thing we need to do is insert a pivot table on this. So I'm going to insert a pivot table. We're going to do it into a new worksheet. I'm going to move this Microsoft thing out of the way. I'm going to take my date, drop it into the rows right there. I'm going to take my value, drop it in over here. I'm going to right click and hit ungroup so that we get the raw. We're not dealing with that date hierarchy, which is like the bane of my existence. I'm sure a lot of people like it though. I can't stand it. But in any case, now we have our pivot table. I'm going to go and insert a timeline like this. You see it found our date column. Okay, so we have our timeline over here. Another thing that annoys me about timelines, they always start scrolled so far to the right. That's so weird to me. Okay, so just want to show you as we change this timeline, it's going to change this table here. And the next thing we want to do, now that we know that that component is working, is we're going to insert a line chart on top of that. So we have the first parts of our lookup working. So I'll delete that here. Don't need that. Let's get rid of these things here. Hide all field buttons on the chart. They're annoying. We don't need them. So let's move move this over here, just make sure it's working. Okay, so it's pulling up the information that we want. We like how it looks. And of course, you know, if we needed to grab more, we can go to quarters like that. So that's really where the timeline is going to shine for us. Now we need to make that little small chart under it that's going to tell us what we're highlighting. Okay, so here's how we're going to do that. We jump back to sheet 1. Over here, I'm going to write max date. Actually, I'm going to write min date. I like the idea of starting min. We'll do max date over here, and we're going to call this max value down here. Now, it would be a great idea if you were doing this on your own time for you to make these named ranges. But here, I'm just going to bypass that. That's okay. But you really probably should do that. Okay, so I want to know what's the minimum date that pivot table is pulling back. So I'm going to type in equals min here. We'll go to the pivot table. I'm just going to do it all on row A like that. So we see that's the minimum date. If we convert this to a short date, 1974, we like that. I'm going to highlight this formula here, Control V, to get it to get the same region. And I'm just going to change this to a max right here. So we see that that's 27912. Again, let's make that a short date. So let's double check, 1974 to 1976. Ooh, looks good. We like that. Okay, and then we have the max value here where I forgot to put an E. And we want to get the maximum value from this chart. And you're going to see why here soon. So I'm going to do equals max. Now, again, I think I left this as table something. Like what is it's calling this table under 1_2. Well, that's very tacky. We should probably name that something out in our own work, right? That would be the best way to go and not call it table 1. But we have the values here, and I just want you to focus on the process on how to make this work. Okay, so now that we have that information, I'm going to create a column where if the values to the left are within the date range right here, it's going to return that value. Otherwise, if it's not, it's going to return an NA. So let's call this within range like that. And here I'm going to do equals if, and if this date is greater than or equal to this, make sure to hit F4 to lock it in. And if this here is less than or equal to this, got to lock it in, F4, like that. If that is, we're going to pull back the value. Otherwise, we're going to do an NA. Hit enter on that. And we see 1974 is when our date should be being pulled in. So let's see here, 1974. Let's go down. Oh, we see it right here. We're good with that. Looks good. Pull it in. And the next thing we want to do is, if it's within range, within range on this one, this is going to give us our backdrop. You're going to see in a second. We want it to display the max value. Otherwise, we don't want it. We want it to be an NA. So before I go into that, so you can just sort of see what I'm doing here, I'm going to insert a line chart here. I'm going to grab these values here, Control C. And I'm going to just click on this line chart, Control V to paste them in. Okay, so here's, by the way, why we would want the whole thing, right? And not just peanut butter spread over the years. So here's our whole set of values here. Now, if I take this range here, I'm going to just highlight it, Control C, right? I'll click into this chart again, Control V. Now you notice that it's painted that orange color on it. So what that's effectively done is told us the range we're highlighting. So we know exactly what we're looking at within the context of everything else. So we can just make the background of this kind of lighter. So now I want to make an additional background on this that's going to actually provide some more of that highlight of the region, just to kind of bring it all home. So that's why we're going to use the max value, and you're going to see this in a second. All right. So we're going to call this background here, and what we could do is, you know, I could test. I think in the way I usually do this, I just retest for this for the same parameters rather than test if this is an NA or not. You know, you can make this logic in a million different ways. So I'm going to highlight here. So I'll hit F4, 399. So again, all I got to do here, Control C, I'm going to click on this, Control V. So you see it popped, it put this 399 up here. I'm going to right click that. We're going to go to change series type. So we're going to change the type of series it is, make that a column chart like that. And now we kind of get the background, right? So if I take this here like that, and you could, of course, make, if this doesn't look good, you can, of course, just make these touch each other. Let's see here. Let's go to Format Data Series. Make sure that the gap width is 0 on that. So now it's kind of shaded in like that. Of course, you can make this a different color if you want to. Let's go ahead and do something kind of lighter. So once we have that built, you could set this up, you know, so this max equals that max there. I think we're going to kind of round out this example. I'm just going to style this a little bit. And once I've built it, all I got to do is click Control C here, bring it back over here. And now it's just kind of a matter of layout. So we're going to pop that over there. Okay, so that's the foundations to make this type of interactive chart. If you'd like to make that and understand what you're doing. So we've made that kind of chart. The next kind of chart I was very interested in that I really kind of thought about a lot is the New York Times chart for COVID cases. So if you look here, we have these kinds of charts here, right? These are perfect for spark lines. So you see, in many ways, these are spark lines, right? This is a spark line. When it shows Ohio, that's where I was born, or New York City, where I'm living. So I can, let's see here. I'm not sure how they're organized, but you can see these types of charts here. Could we make something like this where we could create a spark line and then add a moving average to it? Well, I think we can. And we would do that by first creating the spark line, then creating another spark line with the moving average, then using the camera tool to layer it. So let's go ahead and do that. So in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a new Excel file here. And over in your in the download file, which I'm going to provide a link to at the end of this, in the download file I have in this README here, this is actually the GitHub where the data is being stored for the New York Times repository. So we're going to actually use their data. I'm going to go click on the Data tab from Web here. Paste that in right there. Now, I should say while this is happening, I know I'm going fast because I love showing everyone a lot of stuff. I'll click Transform Data here, but I'm also teaching a masterclass of 6.5 hours where I'll have labs and printouts, and I won't be moving this fast. But here, I just want to get you a breadth of what you can do if you think about the problems differently. So less into how to make it, but more like, hey, if I knew how to think about these problems differently, I would know how to make this stuff on my own. So we don't need the FIPS code here. That's kind of a U.S. territory thing. It's not as important. We're not going to deal with deaths. It's a little too moribund for us today. So we have the date here. We have the state. We have cases. I'm liking how this looks. We'll go to Close and Load To. Making a new table here. Okay, so we've built that. One of the things I might want to do is, well, perhaps I want to pull a specific case, right? I want to pull a specific case that I'm interested in. First, I got to get a list of states, right? So this is kind of how I do this as I'm not in production mode, but when I'm in production, obviously this is a lot more organized. But what I might do here is if I want to get the unique state list, I'm going to use one of these new Excel functions, unique, highlight everything, US state. It's going to pop out the state list right there. And then we're going to start building some interactivity. Select a state here. I'm going to go to H2, go to data, data validation drop down. I'm going to select list. The source is going to be this right here. Go ahead and hit enter on that. So now we have the source. Okay, so let's say I want to pull back New York. Again, we're keeping this very quick and dirty. In your version, I've actually gone ahead and alphabetized it and made it a a little bit better in that way. So what I'll do here is I'm going to do equals filter. We're going to pull out New York from this entire array. So grab the whole thing, and then let's see here. What do we want to pull out? I always, you know, I'm still new to filter, okay? So I always mess this up actually, starting out. So let me move this over here. Okay, so we wanted to match this one right here. Lock that in. Hit enter. Okay, let's see here. Filter U.S. state. What did I? Oh, we got to do it on the whole thing. Boom. Okay, so now we've filtered that. We've filtered that out. So let's see here. Let's move this. We're going to move this down into the right. I love this new filter. So call this date, state, cases, index. I always add this stuff, even though I don't even know if I'm going to be using an index column here, but I always just add it when I'm sort of playing around and trying to figure out what I want it to do. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a spark line out of the cases, and then we're going to create a spark line out of the moving average, and then we're going to layer them. First problem is the cases that New York Times brings in is that you can notice here that these are total cases. These are not the differences, right? So these are not cases per day. So we're going to have to make that. So keeping it quick and dirty, we're going to do this minus this. Hit enter on that. Double click that the way down. Next thing is we want to do the moving average. Okay, so I think New York Times uses a 14-day moving average. I'm going to just use a 7-day moving average here. Type in average like that. Highlight all of this here. Enter. Double click it the way down. Okay, so let's make our two different charts. First, I'm going to go over here. Please don't send me hate mail, but I am going to use Merge and Center. I don't really have a problem with Merge and Center. A lot of people don't like it. And I think they're not going to like it for the reason I'm about to run into. Because if I want to insert a spark line into a Merge and Centered cell, I'll click on that, and it immediately thinks that my data range is the merge cell. So that's totally wrong. My data range is over here, like this, K5 through K148. My location range is the cell itself, is this guy, right? So I'll go ahead and hit enter. Okay, so that created the line chart. Let's turn it into a column chart that looks a little bit more like the New York Times. Give it maybe a nice little color here, like that. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. Now let's create the moving average. I'll hit Control-C on this, Control-V to paste it down below. So that's just to get me another spark line. I'm going to go ahead and hit edit data because we're going to have to do that. You can see it doesn't have the data set that I want. Let me do that again. Spark line, edit data, single spark line data location. So what do I want it to be? I want it to be this here. Keep taking it down all the way. Hit enter like that. Okay, so that let's see here. Did we pull that? That doesn't look right. Let's make sure we did that right. Edit single spark lines data. So this is the moving average. Oh, did I do this? I did this on the cases one. So let me move it to cases per day and hit enter on that. And now let's do this. Okay, boom, that looks a lot better. Go to spark line, turn that into a line, make this black here. I know I'm moving fast, but I just want to make sure we cover everything. I'm going to make this a little thicker. That's too thick. Too thick. All right, make it like that. So how do we get this on here? Easy peasy. Go to the camera tool, say cheese, drop it over here. Notice it starts out with a white background. We can hit reset picture. That's going to remove the background. And then all you got to do here is you can go to align, and you go to snap to grid. You can just snap it right on there. Okay, so these components are a little more lightweight than charts. Just a way you could do that. Okay, so that is our second chart. Our third chart is if you scroll down here, you can see that we have these weekly cases per capita. And these are spark lines, right? These follow the spark line way of working. Now, the problem is I couldn't make one of these in Excel as the sparkline exists right now, because I only get one sparkline color for the main color. However, I do get high and low points. So what I could do is I could figure out if it's moving a lot, I can make that, let's say, a 3. I can make all of the really, extensive moves, the maximum moves, the really high ones, a 3, right? And so that would always be the high point in my range. And perhaps I can make a middle move, a 2. And if it's not moving at all, or if it's decreasing, I can make that a 1. And then I could set my spark line size to just be from 0 to 1. Now, if that's confusing you, that's okay. Don't worry. We're going to do it all together. So what I'm going to do here is we have our moving average. I'm going to, over here, we're going to do the work on the moving average so that it's a little bit more pronounced. So what I can do is I can do kind of like rate of infection encoding. Well, let's do the rate of infection first. So if 15 is greater than 14.66, that means it grew by 2%. So 1.02 is about 2.2, 2.3%. We'll just double click that the way down like this. And what we need to do here is we need to now add a type of encoding. So I'm going to do equals ifs like that. We're going to say if this is greater than 20%, return a 3. If it is greater than 1, about 1, so it's between 10 and 20%, right? Greater than 1, do greater than equal to 1 here. Make it a 2, and we're using the ifs, by the way, IFS. Great little function that Microsoft just added. And then finally, if it's less than 1 here, we'll drop a 1. Okay, so that's a 2. Let's see here. Is that greater than 20%? It's not. So we like that. Double click the way down and get 3s, 2s, and 1s. Okay, so that's perfect. That's what we want. I'm going to try to create a new sparkline under here. And what we're going to do is I'll go to Insert, Column, and again, it messes us up with the location range. Very annoying. I have to always reset that. And now let's grab the encoding like this. So we did all of it there. And you're looking at this and you're like, what the heck is that? That doesn't really tell me anything. Okay, well, let me get there. So I'm going to go to Sparkline here. And the first thing is our axis is all messed up, right? It's starting, for some weird reason, it's not starting on a minimum axis of 0. But it's a bar chart, and we know by data visualization rules it needs to do that. So just to show you, I clicked on that, and I went to Axis, made a custom value, and I set it to 0. So now you see it's showing everything. So let's take a look at this, all right? Our highest point, we're going to click on this. We're going to check that. That'll be our highest point. It made that marker color a red. By default, I'm going to make it kind of a burnt orange like that. I'm going to click on our low point. That's our lowest value. So I'll go to marker color. Under low point, I'm going to make that a less than burnt orange, like that. And then finally, for our sparkline color, we got to put somewhere in the middle like this. So that's going to be something that's a 2, right? So if it's not a high point or a low point, if it's not a 1 or a 3, it's got to be a 2. So we're going to make it like that. All right, so that looks a little bit better. As I'm looking at it, every time I do this, I always end up changing the colors. So let's set the axis correctly, and then we're going to change the colors. So notice here, this is not exactly what I want it to look like. So I'm going to go to Axis, and under the minimum value, we set that to a 0. Under the maximum, or the custom max value, we'll make that a 1. So now everything's the same height. So when I do that, now we actually do get a sense of this major increase that's happening here, and then slightly drop off, and it going a little bit lower each time. So let me go here. I don't like these colors. They're driving me nuts. So let's make the sparkline color. If you want to do this sort of gradation, it's always good to use what Excel already has. So we'll make that kind of blue, make the marker color high point kind of like that, and then we'll make the low point this one right here. Okay, so I like that one a little bit more. So that's how we would build this. Now we only really have 3 types of colors to choose from with sparklines. If you wanted to, like, let's say do 6 colors, you would have to make 2 different sparklines and then layer them on top of each other. Because again, we only have a regular sparkline color, a high point, and a low point. We can't use the negative encoding because that's going to go below the axis and not give us what we want it to look like. So this is just another one that Microsoft forgot. Okay, So man, I'm really busting fast here. I thought I wanted to speed up because I lost 7 minutes. So now I'm just going to give you one last thing because I promised some VBA. Now, in my estimation, in my world, if I was doing this sort of exploratory data analysis or even trying to build something like a dashboard in Excel and not doing Power BI because I still love Excel, if I wanted to do something like that, I don't love being able, like having to select everything like this and going to insert and then selecting a sparkline. What I'd rather be able to do is just type in equals sparkline. Wouldn't that be cool? So if there are any VBA programmers out there who would think to themselves, boy, that would be cool, and I would love to build this, and you want to talk to me about my ideas for it, feel free. I am probably not that coder anymore. I was at one point, but you know, you got to run a business too, so it's hard to grab time to do stuff like that. But if you wanted to build something like this for your own personal macro, here's how I like to do it. I'm going to cheap out. I'm going to do something that I tell people never to do, right? I'm going to hit record macro. We're going to make it macro 1. Why not? I'll go to insert, new sparkline right here. It's asking for the data range. In this case, it really doesn't matter, right? Because, you know, we're just using this as an example. So let's just go for the total number of cases like that. I'll go hit enter, and I'm going to hit control up just to get back up there. So you see here, let's make this bigger. I'm going to highlight this whole thing, merge and center. Okay, so you see it made a nice sparkline for me. Now, I know it's still recording, so we're going to have to get rid of some of that junk there. I'll go ahead and hit stop recording. Let's take a look within our code here and see what we have. Okay, so it recorded this macro. Let's knock out the stuff we don't need. So I'm going to take out all this junk here, and then basically everything after this, right? We really only need one line for this example, but you could, of course, make this very, very intense, right? So up here, I'm going to call this sparkline, and I'm going to change this to a function like that. We want to bring in the source as the range here. We'll remove range, this one right here, active. We'll remove that, make it active cell to refer to the cell that it's being used. And over here where it says source range, we're going to call that source. Remember, we'll bring this in as a range, so we can call this source.address like that. Okay, so that should be it. If I've done it right, I can go over here and do a equals sparkline like this. And you see it popped up. So now it's asking for my data. Put this, control shift down, hit enter. Okay, so it worked. And you see it brought back to 0 here, right? Why did it bring back a 0? Because in the code, it's a function. So we just have to tell it, so it has to return something, right? So we have to tell it to return nothing in this case. But wouldn't it be cool if it did actually return something, like an average? I'll go ahead and I hit enter on that. Wouldn't it be cool if it returned something like an average, right? And you just masked it with you did like a custom function, and you masked it so it didn't show. But if you said equals and you selected that cell, well, now you're taking the sparkline metaphor even more. And so I would love to see, I don't know if any Microsoft folks are watching this, if there was a world in which you could just get sparklines like this and it returned some type of object and you could just say equals that cell in the same way that we're doing all these different new data types. Okay, so I've gone through just about everything. I know I've gone quickly. There's a lot to talk about in 50 minutes. I do want to show you before anything else here that this actually is dynamic. So as we change this, looks like it didn't like New Hampshire. Oh, and weirdly, it changed, it added a sparkline there. I wonder what I'm doing here. But it keeps adding a sparkline to everything. That's a bizarre thing. I've not seen that before. Well, it didn't, in my testing, it didn't do that. So I'll just turn this off for now. And like I said, this is incomplete. So I'll let you guys see if you want to figure that one out. In any case, let me go to Sparkline here and hit clear on that. And we'll clear this one out. In any case, real quick before I turn it over to questions, because if you guys want to download any of this here, all my files are here. And I don't know if I did a good job of giving this to the presenters beforehand. So you can go here, excel.tv/EVG, just download all my files. They're right there. They should download on your computer. I'm going to keep this up for a brief second. And then I also just want to remind you that I am doing a masterclass. Again, I know I'm going fast here. This is to demonstrate my thinking here. It's not necessarily a reflection of how I teach when I'm not time constrained and I don't want to dump a million charts in 50 minutes. But if you were interested in that, in taking a lot of this stuff, as you can see, I push Excel to its limits. If you were interested in that, you could check me out on that at the Datatel Productions. I think you'll probably, if you go to our Facebook and anywhere else, you'll see links to this. But it's my masterclass. So just really a lot of the stuff I taught here, but more advanced, more step by step. We go at your pace, not teaching to hundreds of people at once, but rather only a few people. So with all that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to you all for questions.
Thanks, Jordan. So it's just Tim Hang back here again. Jordan, just a quick one. Do you mind if we download the files from your web link as well and put them into the OneDrive along with all the rest of the Excel virtual global stuff?
Please do that. Please go ahead and do that.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. So we had one question from David, who was asking, shouldn't the moving average go against the cases per day instead of total cases? I have to admit I wasn't paying 100% attention when you were doing that particular example, so I'm not sure if that was an oversight or fixed, or you can tell me if that's relevant.
You know, I went against cases per day because that's the way the New York Times did it. So you know, I think that I may have done it. I did accidentally do it against total cases, and then you saw I fixed it. So I would do it against cases per day, just to get a sense of. I mean, I think that's the way the New York Times had done it. I'd love to like bring you a little bit more analysis on that, but really my goal was to kind of recreate what they were doing.
Cool. No, that's great. A couple of other excited people who are really glad to see you here. Still waiting on other questions if anyone has anything else. But while we're waiting for additional questions, we might as well put up the other two slides that we know everyone on the stream has seen already. Evaluations, if people can either run the QR code or check out the bit.ly link and provide your feedback on how Jordan's session went, that'd be really appreciated. And likewise, the second slide on the Microsoft Excel team seeking research participants. I'm not going to go through and tangle my words through the rest of that paragraph again.
And can I say, I've been one of these participants, and it's a fun experience. As you can see, like clearly I have a lot of thoughts about how things should be built, and this really is a moment and a time for you to get that on the ground. Here's what I do every day, for them to hear you and listen to what your needs are.
Yeah. All right, so well, it's 1:50. It's 55 past the hour, but we've got one question that we'll try and answer really quickly. If you can give us a 1-minute answer, Jordan. What skills do you recommend to learn as a financial analyst? Learning Python, VBA, or what?
R.
R, really?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, listen, I love R. A lot of people. Okay, so listen, I love R. But truth is, my true answer to this 1 minute is you got to learn them all. So I know Python, I know R, and I know VBA. Right now, you need to be able to work seamlessly through all of them. It's not hard if you learn one of them to move from the others. So that's my take on it. You know, we're becoming more cross-platform, and so you need to be able, I would say, be able to read all of them and then pick one to specialize in. And R was kind of where I got thrown in when I was doing analysis, but that was before the Python days.
Fair enough. Thanks for the that answer. And on the topic of different things to learn, I have to admit the biggest takeaway I'm going to take out of your presentation is actually I'm going to steal your sequel joke. So yeah, I'll expect to hear that one again sometime. All right. Thank you, Jordan, so much for this hour. Look, we bashed through the presentation. Apologies it was such a rush, but hey, you know, I think everyone's got a lot out of it. So thank you very much. And so for everyone else who's still on stream, we're now going to change moderation. So it's my turn to take a rest, and Liam Bastick is joining us back in the stream to take you for the next few hours.
Thanks very much, Tim. I appreciate it. And hello, Jordan. Sorry, I missed a lot of your session there. I was doing something really busy, like sleeping, but I'm back. And of course, all the glitches always seem to happen in my session, so I'm really looking forward to that. But thank you very much to the both of you. I missed the sequel joke. I want to know what was the sequel joke. I mean, I could do with something that's funny at some point. Look, we're almost at the top of the hour. So I'm just going to put the next slide up ready so as people can have a comfort break and things like that. We are getting ready for 4 p.m. UTC GMT. This will signal the end of the first 48 hours when this one finishes up. We're going crazy with this. It's creating the ultimate dynamic crosstab report with array formulae, depending on where you are in the world. And our presenter is Roger Govia. He'll be on at 4, I hope. So if you just want to take a quick break, we'll be back in about 2.5 minutes time with that session. Thank you.